this is the part 4 of the scattering chapter, and here we will discuss how to calculate the scattering cross section for different problems. And in order to do that, I will start with a little backward step by going on discussing once more the setup of the problem, because last time I discussed it by saying about the time independent Schrodinger equation, and I will tell you how that comes from the general Schrodinger equation, what the problem is, what is the general strategy of solving it, and we will discuss two approximate ways to solve it. One of them is partial wave method, which is pretty much useful for any short range potentials, and that is basically almost all the potential you know. And then I will discuss a more generic method, which is Born approximation, which will be most likely in the part 5. So in order to do that, let me first discuss the setup of the problem, because last time we defined the scattering cross section and all these quantities first from the classical side, and then we showed that what does it mean to calculate that same quantity, how to connect that classical idea with the quantum mechanical idea by writing it in terms of a wave outgoing wave amplitude. So this was what we discussed last time. So redefining the problem again, the problem is, it's a effectively two body problem which is reduced down to a one particle problem, and that is basically an incident wave, a beam of incident wave is incident particles with energy E is coming from the left side towards the right side. So in this axis system I call it like x, y and z direction. So the beam is moving in the z direction, uniform beam, and it will hit a scatterer and then it will go in some direction. Now in the language of quantum mechanics, if I think these particles are wave, it is like a plane wave, incoming plane wave, incident plane wave, which is hitting the scattering center, and that is generating these spherical waves which you are detecting in the detector in this solid angle omega and all that which we define. So this is essentially a two body problem, but we reduce it to an one body problem by a particle scattered by a potential Vr. So the full problem of is basically this Schrodinger equation which we have to solve, the time dependent Schrodinger equation in this scenario. And since it is a elastic scattering, we know that the incoming particle will have the same energy as the scattered particle. So the detector will detect at the same energy E. So that corresponds to a stationary state situation. So the particle is always at a particular energy E. So we can fit into the stationary state form, which is psi r t is psi r e to the power minus I e t by h bar, plug in that and I get the time independent Schrodinger equation which we have to solve. Now note that we made several approximations about that. We said that as r going to infinity, the Vr is going to 0 at a faster rate than r, and that means the particle is effectively free at infinity. So if that is true and the detector is located also very far away from the particle, we argued that the asymptotic solution will be e to the power ikz for the incoming part plus the spherical wave e to the power ikr by r with the amplitude f theta, which is the one we are going to calculate. It is angle dependent angular and it does not depend on phi because of the symmetry of the problem. And we showed that the cross section, as we defined earlier, can be related to this f theta square. So our main job is to solve this equation 23, and for a given Vr, and calculate Vr and given E incident energy with this boundary condition which is at infinity, that the wave function must be of this form. Our main job is to solve that and obtain the unknown quantity f theta. So that is the statement of the problem. Now note that here a bit of sign and all that we wrote this waveform in this way, ikz minus iet. So that guarantees this is a right bound wave, and outgoing, incoming or right bound. Incoming is same as right. Similarly, outgoing is e to the power ikr minus iet by h bar, which is outbound in a spherical wavefront. And by the surface of the wavefront means the constant phase, how the constant phase move around, as you know, just to make sure that everything is in place. Okay, now I will discuss this partial wave approach to scattering and tell you what is this whole formalism which allows you to, this is one of the two formalism we are going to discuss in this course, and tell you that how do we essentially solve this problem within certain limitations like the potentially short range, for example. Now the name of partial wave could be confusing. You might think it is something, and it is not very confusing once you get the picture because it came from the analogy from optics. But you might try to think it before you start thinking in some complicated way. So this name, this approach is also there in optics and acoustics. It is borrowed here because particles are waves, so the wave machinery is borrowed here. As you know, that is what we are doing throughout the quantum mechanics. But the basic idea from the quantum mechanical formalism is basically to insert a complete set of states. So if I have an arbitrary state alpha, I insert a complete set of state and calculate these projections, or calculate these coefficients, and how this state is expressed in terms of some eigenvalues of a particular problem. And in this case, these are like the spherical waves, this complete basis of spherical wave we are going to express it. So this idea is presented in a way that says that it is useful to do this problem without actually solving all this, doing all the entire algebra or something, and to make some approximation where the calculation gets easier. So the core idea is very simple, but it has associated physical picture which is also very simple, but the calculation can get sometimes tedious because it requires sometimes to use these special functions. Okay, also to note one more important point, that physically this idea is similar in spirit although different in content and details. It's similar in spirit to Huygens construction in optics. So what is that construction? That construction is that every point of the wavefront is a source of a secondary spherical wavelet, the envelope of which defines the wavefront at the next instant. Now interference between these between these secondary wavefronts or secondary wavelets, that leads to a destructive interference in all direction, but except the forward direction, such that the plane wave continues to be a plane wave. That is how you constructed this plane wave. Now if you put an obstacle in the path, then certain some of these spherical waves which is coming from this from the points of each point of the wavefront will be obstructed, and that will distort the plane wave, and how that will do that, that is basically the details, that is basically the idea, that is what we are going to calculate. Okay. Except now you think instead of this wave in optical wavefront, instead this is the de Broglie wavefront, that is the only difference. So let us do the partial wave decomposition of plane wave. So essentially, since we are solving, one wave is an incoming plane wave, another is a spherical wave, it is best to go in one basis, which is the spherical basis. That is what we will do, because that is where we are doing the detection, and let us see how to do that. So the state of a free particle is described as you know, as a simultaneous eigenfunction of the Hamiltonian H and momentum operators like that, psi k r n e to the power I k r with the eigenvalues h cut square k square by 2m for energy and h cut k for momentum. Now for a spherically symmetric problem, we will switch to a basis which is a simultaneous eigenvector of h L square and Lz. That is what we know, that we go to a basis of these three operators, which we also did earlier, and we know the solution we can be divided into two parts, one is a radial part, another is an angular part. Sorry about the tilted writing. Somehow when I wrote, I didn't realize it's going to tilt that much, but I hope it will get better over next pages. Yeah, I think it will get better. So this part is a bit too tilted. Okay, so we know this result can be divided into two parts. One is a special, one is a radial part and another is angular part, and the angular part satisfies certain equation because of spherical symmetry. That's easy to solve, and all the non-triviality is packed inside the spherical inside this radial part, because the radial part has this potential which is just dependent on VR. Okay. So that is basically my radial parts must satisfy this equation, this form of equation. This is something we did in last semester, and like before, we will go to the dimensionless variable rho going to kr, writing rho as equal to kr, and that is basically this quantity. This is, that basically makes my equation to be of this form. This is, note that I am doing it for free particle. Okay, so now we want to solve this problem and we want to get the spherical base form. So this is a spherical Bessel equation, and the solution of this is a spherical Bessel function, and the solution is given by this. You can look it up in any special mathematical handbooks or mathematical, you can work it out. I mean, that's the best place to look at in mathematical handbooks or some mathematical physics book. So this solution is of this form, the spherical Bessel function, and here we are interested about this extreme limits, which is low rho, small rho, or small or very large rho. So in very small rho, this equation becomes, this solution becomes this, and very large rho, this solution becomes this. So very large rho is actually the more interesting solution, and we'll see how we will deal with that in a moment. So now I can rewrite this full solution, because we realize that the radial part is just this spherical Bessel function. So I replace the r part as this JL with a normalization constant n and the angular part. And as I said, since we are interested in large R, we want to write the solution only for large R. So this large rho solution is this, so which I write in exponential form, go to the R space, and it looks like this. That is JLKR is 1 by 2IKR within bracket e to the power IKR minus IL pi by 2 by R minus e to the power minus IKR plus IL pi by 2 by R. So if I rewrite this in a little neat form, it becomes this, because this IL pi by 2, I can take out this quantity, and this part is nothing but minus 1 to the power L, and that is basically a neat form, a physically intuitive form, because this part simply tells me that it is like the incoming wave, and if the incoming wave is spherical, this is basically like the it describes the incoming wave, and the other part describes the outgoing wave with a factor, with the extra factor of minus 1 to the power L. And we can check that this is indeed describing an incorrect wave by putting the time dependence, and you can see this minus IKR minus IK T by h bar. So it must be the some sphere whose radius is decreasing with as t is increasing. So that can be also seen from the radial flux. Okay. Also notice that these functions, since they are solution of this Schrodinger equation, it forms a complete set of states. So any plane wave or any wave can be expanded in this spherical partial wave. So these are my spherical partial wave, which came from solving the Schrodinger equation, writing down the solution of the Schrodinger equation in the spherically symmetric basis, or in the spherically symmetric Schrodinger equation. So now I will do that expansion. I will write down this plane wave, incoming plane wave in the z direction, to be in these bases. So when I do that, I get this, it can be written in this form. Now this expansion has a, this is just like expanding one function into, that is, as I said, this is just like this inserting these states. This is just like this operation with putting this R and all these spherical bases. This is just that task, nothing more, with the unknown quantity, which is this projection CL. So that is what we have to work out. That we will work out by considering the orthonormality property of this part. So we can look at the orthonormality property of this Legendre polynomials PL. So this orthonormality property is this, and we can also consider this particular integral, which is very useful to do this calculation. So, and that integral is basically e to the power I k r cos theta. So, this z is basically r cos theta. So, that is why I have to do eventually this integral, that is e to the power I k r cos theta, that p l cos theta d cos theta, and that integral is this, that I get by multiplying both sides by p l prime, and since there is a delta l l prime, this will give me this. So, that is how I find a relation which can be in principle that can be solved to work out the CL. So, in order to do that, now I have to solve this equation, and we want to solve it because this solution is not so simple. So, we will solve it in the approximation of large R. So, if we want to do that, so first let us do this left hand side of the integral, which is rewritten by writing cos theta as zeta. I rewritten it to the power I k zeta, p l zeta, d zeta and all that, and it is there is a r factor which I missed, I k r zeta. So, when I do this definite integral, I get a form like this. This is done by using by parts. So, you have these two terms, and now I want to plug in this. So, now I want to plug in this plus 1 minus 1 and write it in this form. Now, note in the last step we have used these forms of this Legendre polynomial, that is PL plus 1 is 1 and PL minus 1 is minus 1 to the power L, and we know that by the Riemann-Lebesgue lemma that the Fourier transform of a reasonably well behaved function, so I wrote it a little behind, the Fourier transform of a reasonably well behaved function, this thing, it goes to 0 for large x. So, if you know that, it is good. If you do not know that, you can check it out for some test function. Okay. So, now because of that, this second term for large R will vanish, okay, this second term which you get by parts. So, now this also it can be seen also in another way, because physically also, because in large x this part becomes rapidly oscillatory. So, with a rapidly oscillatory path, it is like plus minus plus minus plus minus. When you sum it over a region, they cancel each other and then the integral goes to 0. So, this part basically vanishes and goes faster than to 0 faster than 1 by r. So, in large R limit, where we are interested to find the solution of this problem, the psi k l m r becomes of this form, up to leading order, okay. And that is basically, now these two terms are basically, again I rewrite it of this form, and this is basically 2 I to the power L by I k r sin k r minus L pi. Now that we have evaluated this term, this side of the integral, now I want to work out the CL by comparing it with the right hand side. So, when I do that, compare with the asymptotic form of the Bessel function in equation 33, I get the CL to be I to the power L 2L plus 1. So, my full expansion is e to the power I k z is sum over L I to the power L 2L plus 1 j L k r p L cos theta. This is the full sum, and notice that the asymptotic form for this, from equation 33 I can rewrite the asymptotic form of the JL and all that. So, this is basically this. Now, this is not a new thing, because this tells you basically how you get the, well, it is this looks very unusual, but it tells you that how the superposition of partial waves or the spherical waves gives you a plane wave. How they must add up with what kind of coefficient or CL such that you get a plane wave out of this in the large R limit. So that is basically this the physical meaning of this exercise. Okay, now let us from here calculate the f theta. How to calculate the f theta from this? So the idea is from the Huygens principle analogy that there is a scatterer in the path of this plane wave, in this path of this guy, and that scatterer will disturb the will disturb this outgoing wave, and the idea is that is to calculate this disturbance in the outgoing wave and work out this f theta. So the outgoing will be still spherical because of the symmetry of the problem, but they will have a disturbance in the phase of that, and that phase we want to calculate. So that is the idea of this partial wave expansion. So as I said that the scatterer will give rise to an additional outgoing spherical wave contributing to the scattered wave, and we will want to calculate this scattering amplitude f theta and want to work out the differential cross section. So the wave function psi r in the presence of the scattering, in the presence of the potential, will be defined from this equation 40 because it will no longer is, it will be ikz, and we want to find out what is that difference. And we write that outgoing wave, we modify that outgoing wave from this form, from this particular form to be this minus 1 to the power L 2 ik e to the power ikr minus 1 to the power L SL e to the power ikr by r. Notice that there is only one change we made, and that is basically there is a minus sign here and there is a typo, I wrote a plus sign. The only change I made is addition of this SL factor. So this is like my S matrix. So I am just saying that this is, as we know, this is the incoming part and this is the outgoing part. There is a minus sign here which I missed. So the outgoing part will have a modification in the amplitude, which is the picture, and because it is inelastic scattering, the incoming because it is elastic scattering, the incoming and outgoing flux must be equal, and no particles are absorbed or emitted. So this is just a phase. So that's why it must be just a phase. It cannot be an amplitude. The probability cannot change. So this SL, this is a similar thing as we argued in 1D. So this term is basically a phase. So I can rewrite it as SL e to the power 2 I delta L. Now why 2? This is for some later convenience. So now the f theta calculation, so now you can see this SL is almost like the f theta but not yet entirely, so we will just make the full connection with f theta. So from here we want to identify this, what is the f theta, the scattering amplitude, and that is basically the coefficient of the outgoing wave. Okay. So if we take the difference between the asymptotic psi r as we wrote down in 41 and the incoming 40, the incoming plane wave, then we can work out this f theta part, and that f theta is nothing but sum over 2L plus 1 PL cos theta SL minus 1 by 2 ik. So now I do just one more step of algebra because this SL is nothing but e to the power I delta L, so I can rewrite it for convenience in this form 2L plus 1 PL cos theta sin delta L e to the power I delta L by k, but just expressing this e to the power I delta L into sin form. Okay. So now from here we can further calculate the differential cross section, which is just square of that, and this square, I take the square of this quantity and this is just this form, and we can also work out the total cross section, which is integrating it over the solid angle, and that is nothing but 4 pi by k square sum over L 2L plus 1 sin square delta L. And if we use the orthogonality of this Legendre polynomial equation in 35, that this expression can be written as that this is, if I say the sorry, so while calculating this quantity I use the orthogonality of Legendre polynomial, but this is just to interpret this. So, if I say what is the contribution from the Lth partial wave in this sum, that is just 4 pi by k square 12 plus 1 sin square delta. So, this is what I want to calculate eventually. So, what is the a particular partial wave is contributing how much into the scattering cross section. Now, also note one interesting thing from here, that this whole thing can be written as the imaginary part of the forward scattering cross section. So, if I put theta equal to 0, that means the forward scattering, this PL cos theta is just 1. So, the imaginary part of that forward scattering cross section is this quantity, that is 1 by k 12 plus 1 sin square delta L. So, this quantity for elastic scattering for a particular L, or not, the total elastic scattering cross section is nothing but 4 pi by k, the imaginary part of f theta equal to 0. So, this expression is called a optical theorem. There is again some historical design behind it. It was probably first discovered in the context of optics, and that was probably somewhat a fast theorem, so people call it optical theorem, otherwise they would have named it better. So, anyways, but the point is, this whole thing, the main point of all this exercise is that converting this entire business into a simple machinery where we have to calculate something and tell you what is the differential cross section and what is the total cross section of the scattering, and then also we will connect it with some physical intuition. So, basically the idea. So, now let us do that, let us do a little bit of physical intuition. So, notice that what are we trying to do here. So, we will try to make a semi-classical picture. So, this semi-classical picture is an attempt to make a rough correspondence between the quantum mechanical picture of a partial wave scattering and the classical picture of this impact parameter business. So, how do we make that connection? Because one of these two picture is entirely classical, because in the classical context there is no meaning of this wave expansion or this wave like picture. On the other hand, in the quantum context there is no meaning of this trajectory of a particle going by a distance b and impact parameter distance b and all. So, that is why we will we call it a semi-classical, because it is a rough picture, it is not a very accurate picture, but it is accurate, it is useful, sorry, I mean to say it is not accurate, but it is useful to give a physical idea behind what is happening and what does this formula actually mean. Okay, first we note that classically the angular momentum of the incident particle with respect to the scatterer is Pb, because this is the scatterer and this is the impact parameter b and p is the linear momentum. So, if I calculate from this point, it is basically Pb is the angular momentum. So, the correspondence is with the quantum mechanical, this classical quantum angular momentum should be compared with the quantum angular momentum, which is LH bar. So, again in a rough and semi-classical sense, we will associate the annular region of impact parameter, which is between b LH bar by p and L plus 1 H bar by p with the Lth partial wave. Now, why it is right, we will see that, why it makes sense, that we will see in a moment. But also note that this is a rough semi-classical picture, so it may not be entirely accurate, but it is this way of thinking will be helpful to get the correct results. Okay. As I said earlier, why it is not accurate, because there is no notion of trajectory in quantum mechanics, and interference between partial wave is meaningless in classical mechanics. But this analogy is basically similar to this Fresnel zones in optics, where except that the optical wavelength is replaced by the de Broglie wavelength. It is useful for a visual picture. So, as I said, the main point of this picture is to associate the impact parameter, the region of the annular region of impact parameter between this particular B to this particular B with the Lth partial wave. So what I am trying to say, we will say the Lth partial wave does a scattering in this impact parameter region. It is something like a Bode quantization type of picture. So why it is, why did we even think in that way? So the reason we thought in that way, because if I take the probability of having a partial wave, what is the probability of a partial wave to have a projection on the plane wave? So that is what I say colloquially as the probability of having a partial wave in a plane wave. So that is basically the coefficient of the expansion. So that probability is basically 12 plus 1 JL and mod square. So if I plot this probability for L equal to 0, this is the plot, the black line. For L equal to 1, the blue line is the plot, and L equal to 2, the red line is the plot. So the notion of the impact parameter can be sought in the so if I want to find something like a impact parameter within the quantum picture, we can say that this is the probability region is basically like the impact parameter. So if the probability is high here, that means that's where the impact can happen, and if it is low here, you say the impact is unlikely to happen. So basically it gives you an idea about the probability of finding a particle in a particular momentum state, which is a plane wave, a particular angular momentum L at a defined radial distance when the particle is in a given momentum state, which is a plane wave state. So if I am in a particular plane wave state, what is the probability of finding that plane wave state of that given momentum into different spherical wave state, and each spherical wave state represents a particular angular momentum, and that is why I correspond this picture of this a particular plane wave angular momentum, which we estimate by PB, with a particular spherical wave whose angular momentum is LH bar. So that is the physical intuition behind this picture. And here, as you can see, that the principal peak for the increasing L occurs at an increasing Kr. So that is basically, this quantum mechanical picture is in line with the classical picture we have drawn. Okay, now how is that kind of a picture useful? Okay, this is okay, that we understand that this gives us a nice picture about this whole thing, but how it is useful, where does that picture lead us, and that is what we like to see. So if I have a potential in a finite range of A is the range, let us say the potential goes almost decays to 0 after a special region A. So then the partial wave corresponding to this impact parameter, which is B, is greater than A. Classically you will think it will hardly see the potential, right? It will almost not see. So the phase shift should be very small. So that is the intuition suggests us. So that means since KB is almost equal to L, that's the angular momentum, that means that when L is greater than AK, so it will contribute very little to the scattering. So that implies immediately that at very low energy, only the smaller L, that is the S wave, will be important for a finite range potential. So this physical picture tells us, so this S wave name comes from the hydrogen atom literature or spectroscopy literature, where we associate angular momentum L equal to 0 with S wave, L equal to 1 with P wave and all that. So mainly what I am trying to say, in a soft scattering or in a low momentum, low energy scattering, this picture suggests us that the partial wave which is in the annular, which is closest to the impact, closest to the scatterer, the partial wave whose peak is closest to the pattern, probability to find it closest to the scatterer, will be the most important, will have the maximum contribution in the scattering cross section. So that is equivalent to saying physically that in a finite range potential, only the S wave is the main important scatterer. All other waves have non-zero probability, of course. All of them are there at the same time, just like we learned in quantum mechanics. But this is the highest probability, main contribution. If we calculate just this, we roughly know we can say what is happening. And there are experimental way to find this kind of arguments, or not only experiment. If you just calculate it in full machinery, you will know how accurate you are by knowing, if for example, if it is a S wave contribution only, we know the S wave is isotropic, symmetric in all the direction in space. So the cross section you will find to be isotropic, probability will be isotropic to find the particle in a beam of high intensity or basically good enough statistics. But if it is P wave for example, then you will see that the isotropy is disturbed. So if you do the full calculation or you do an experiment, then from there you know that whether this approximation you made about S wave and P wave is correct or not, very simply. But this is basically the key takeaway from here, from this picture, that at low energy in a finite range potential, the low L, which means the S wave, is the main contribution in the scattering cross section. So that is the idea, and here is the justification of that idea by thinking the scattering semi-classically as that the classical scattering where the impact parameter is between the range LH bar by P to L plus 1 H bar by P is corresponding with the Lth partial wave. Okay. Now let us come to the main point, which is how to calculate. So this is the key takeaway from here. After all this machinery, given a problem, how do you calculate the phase shift, the scattering cross section or the space within the spherical wave approximation. So here is the step by step recipe. So what will be given to you, that the particle, we have to solve the scattering of particle of mass m and energy E, the projectile or the probe, and the potential is Vr, and we want to solve it using partial wave method. So how do you do that? You will do it by solving this particular static problem as we set up this problem, which is a kind of problem which you know how to solve very well. And we have to search the solution, because we are talking about scattering at asymptotic solution. We have to search solutions of this form, which means the one which is, because the incoming wave is definitely of this form, and the energy is where the energy is h cut square k square by 2m, and the ULKR, the radial part that satisfies this radial. If I plug in this form here in the equation 47, it must satisfy this equation. So the unknown quantity here in this whole thing is the UL. So that is the quantity we have to solve for 49. Now just like in the spherical problems, just by staring at this problem, staring at the form of Vr, you can say many things about the problem, whether it is a bound state, scattering state, or anything else like metastable, this kind of resonance state. A lot of things can be said, but we will not go in the details of that. We will go to some examples of direct calculation, but there is a lot of intuition behind this problem from what we learned in last semester. So note that this ULKR is such that for large R, it also comprises of an incoming and outgoing wave and phase shifted outgoing wave. So this ULKR is basically e to the power minus KR minus 1 to the power L SL, the S matrix to the power IKR. So that is where the S matrix is hidden, as we discussed. Also note that this ULKR also have to be well behaved at R going to 0 limit. So for that we must insist, because otherwise it is diverging, that ULKR at R going to 0, it is 0. So with these conditions, so the bottom line is, if I have to solve the scattering cross section of a problem, I have to solve this equation for a given particle of mass m and energy E by a potential Vr. I have to solve this equation with, where the solutions must be of this form. So when I plug into that, the only equation we have to solve is this, where we have to work out the UL, and that solution must have this asymptotic form. which is because of it's a scattering problem, it must have this asymptotic form, which is this at large r and this at r going to 0. So within this constant we will have to solve this equation. And as just to step back, that what we did basically, that we basically express the stationary state wave function problem into simultaneous eigenstates of h, L square and L. It is just a projection problem, that writing the solution into this particular eigenbasis, and due to the axial symmetry there is of course no phi dependence. And the expansion is of course also crafted in a manner such that in the absence of any potential we get the free particle solution, which is this spherical Bessel function. So UL kr by r is goes to JL kr in the absence of any potential, and psi goes to e to the power ikz. Because it's just a plane wave which is passing like that, which if you expand it into the spherical basis. And also note that writing the radial part of this wave function in this ur by r form simplify the action of this operator del square. So the main task, if I give you a arbitrary potential, arbitrary problem, short range problem, and ask you to calculate the scattering cross section, is solve equation 49 with 50 and 51 being satisfied. That is it, that's the game. Once you do that, you can calculate the SL, from SL you can calculate the delta L, from delta L you can calculate the F theta. That is the main question you want to ask for a particular scattering problem. And also, as we argued by the physical picture and semi-classical picture, if the potential is short range and the energy is sufficiently low, which is a soft scattering, only the few lowest L will be sufficient to calculate the full picture. Of course, to be very accurate you should take all the L's, and most of the time is L equal to 0 and maximum L equal to 1 is what you need. Most of the problems you do at this level, that is what you need. So the solution of what the task is really ridiculously simple. The task is given a VR, solve equation 49 satisfying 50 and 51 for L equal to 0. That is 90% problems you get using this method at MSc level. Okay, so here is one example. Let's take a spherical well, an infinite well, which is this function, this theta function tells you, not infinite well, it's a well of depth V0. It's a spherical well of depth V0. We'll come to the infinite well problem also in a moment. So it's a spherical well with a radial boundary, with a circular boundary, or 3D boundary, sorry, it's not a circle, it's spherical boundary, and it's an attractive potential. V0 is greater than 0, and with the depth is, the potential depth is V0 and the range is A, the radius is A. So plug into this into equation 49. So when we do that, we get this equation which we have to solve, and as we argued that we have to work out the S wave, because we were interested, we argued semi-classically only the low L will contribute, the S, let's say only the L equal to 0 we are interested about. So if I also, it's not enough just to solve this equation, we have to also satisfy the asymptotic forms, which is r at large r it must be of this form, and at small r equal to 0 it must be of this form. So if I take that, these forms, plug in them, so this satisfy this equation at r less than A, and the solution of this equation is n sin qr, where r is less equal to q. In this q is basically 2m by h cut square e plus b0, and r greater than A, the solution is of this form. So we don't need to go at r in large r or anything, because in this problem the b is exactly 0, it is not like decaying to 0 at r greater than A. So any r that is greater than A, this must be the form. Okay. So now we get this, we got this two equations for r less than A and r greater than A, which it must be continuous, because it's a Schrodinger equation that we learned in earlier semester, that if the wave function, because it's a potential which does not have any singularity or anything. So, UR and DUR, dr, the derivative and the wave function and the UR must be, UR and the derivative of DUR must be continuous at r equal to a. So, for that we calculate this DUR, du dr by u at r equal to a with these two expressions in two sides. So, when we do that, I get this form, this particular line, and the unknown quantity is SL here. So, with a little bit of algebra or like using componendo dividendo, we can work out this SL form. Now, this SL is e to the power form because we know this has to be a phase. So, this is basically 2 delta L. So, the delta L must be this minus Ka plus tan inverse K tan Qa by Q. So, we learned what is the phase shift. So, that is basically the calculation. So, very simple calculation once it is the problem is set up in that way, being set up in that way. Now, you might be also interested to do the hard sphere problem, which is when the potential is infinity. Hard sphere means it is reflecting, you cannot penetrate at all, it's infinite well. So, if you do take the limiting conditions or you do the problem separately, you will find that delta L is minus tan inverse JLK by NLK. It's worked out in Griffiths, that's why I am not going over it. But there are some interesting thing to notice from this problem, that when you are at low energy, that means the wave number goes to 0, then in that limit this delta L is minus K to the power 2L plus 1, and that is very easy to connect it with the semi-classical argument we made. It tells you that large L, the phase shift is smaller. It's very easy to see, you can also see it from this expression, but this expression is not a stare and solve intuitive building expression. That's why I took this limit and write it in this form such that I can stare and interpret. So, this tell you as L is large, this term is small, and that contribution is much smaller, because this quantity is, by the way, much smaller than A, much smaller than 1 for low energy. So, that is why when you take higher and higher power, the contribution is small, so the phase shift is negligible. The biggest phase shift is an S wave, which is L equal to 0. So, that is the whole point of this. Now, you are encouraged to do one more calculation, which is also not very hard. You get some equation in spherical basis, which is could be hard to solve. So, you can either, so you do not have to normally solve this kind of equation if it is non-trivial. You can look it up in this integral table books or differential equation table books, or you can work it out numerically, just plot it in Mathematica or something. So, I mean these things have a nice close analytical form, so better to do it that way instead of doing numerics unless it is absolutely needed. So, that is VR is minus V0 to the power minus R, which means the wall is not hard, wall is a soft wall, it's a decaying wall, not a rigid wall. So, this also is a short range, but not as short range as the previous problem. It goes to 0 asymptotically. So, I recommend you to do this exercise and work out this delta L for that. Okay, now there are some general properties of this kind of problems. So, one thing is the threshold behavior. So, what is threshold behavior? Threshold behavior is the observation of this point, that this delta L is nothing but K to the power 2L plus 1. The phase shift in partial wave shift low energy behaves like that, and that basically tells you what is the shift or the partial wave shift for the Lth partial wave for a short range potential. So, this can be proved with a little bit of algebra, but you already know how to do that why this must be the form for a arbitrary short range potential. But we did it for spherical for some special examples, but you can show that this is true for an arbitrary potential. So, you can check that for the problems as shown below above or from the exercise problem. The proof is a little bit of algebra, but it can be proved for arbitrary potential, this will be happen. I am not going to prove that, I am just going to state the thing. So, one interesting thing is to notice that this phase shift is negative for potential that is repulsive, and positive for potential that is attractive everywhere. So this is also something you can do with a little bit of algebra, you can show that. So one more thing, that why it is called threshold behavior, that was not very clear to me. So that nomenclature is sometimes comes from some weird region, so that I have to look it up, but just know this is called that threshold behavior. The name is not important, just to know that for arbitrary short range potential the contribution is like that, and that is also supportive to our semi-classical picture that the Lth partial wave, as L is higher, it is smaller for short range potential, so you can ignore it for very large Ls. The second statement is, this also can be checked and proved with a little bit of algebra, that the phase shift is positive for attractive potential and negative for repulsive potential. So just by looking at the phase shift, you can say that many things about the problem. And there is a practical thing about it. For example, in a nucleon S wave scattering, the phase shift in the spin singlet state, and which is so far in this whole discussion we did not bring in spin into that. We kept the spin separate, but if you include the spin singlet state, so it is sensitive to the short distance nature of the behavior. So this phase shift with energy indicates that the internucleon potential is attractive at large distance, but short range hardcore has a short range hardcore repulsive region. So this thing is discussed a bit in Griffith. I am not going over the details of that, but the sign change and some potential have defined behavior in defined region, like in short in some inside it is attractive in the core, it could be repulsive somewhere else. So these things can be captured by simply from the shape phase shift in defined at different energies. Finally, there is one more thing about this S wave scattering length, we call it. So with a scattering phenomena you can associate a length scale. So how is that done? So notice that this threshold behavior thing we did, that is delta L is k to the power 2L plus 1. So small k is the S wave dominates. So the S wave contribution to the differential cross section, if I take that contribution formula. So what is that contribution formula? The contribution formula is this. Okay. So if I take this contribution formula, and that is there in equation 45. So that is nothing but has this kind of a term which I can write as 1 by k square plus cot square delta. Now this k cot delta, this denominator, non-trivial denominator, can be expanded as a minus 1 by as plus half r naught k square in some Taylor series expansion about 0 energy. So this thing has a dimension of length, of course, because it comes in the cross section expression, and this is called that can be identified as a length scale of the scatterer, or the scattering strength of that, because if you can show from here, because this comes in the denominator, this as is basically contribution, the contribution to the differential cross section is of the order of as square, which is like a length scale. So that is sometimes it is easier to visualize this as a length scale contribution in the scattering. And in many communities like atomic and molecular physics, people quote a scattering strength of a potential in terms of this quantity. This is just an alternative way of writing the same thing, nothing more. Finally, the resonances. This is also something I am not discussing in detail, but know that you can also find this, all this resonating behavior, just like anything bound state, scattering state and resonating state in 1D, you can also find this. So I will not go into the details of that, but you can look at this formula and see this as a peak at this delta kr, and you want to see that this function will peak at delta kr, which is like the resonance, and how the contribution from near that peak comes. So if you write that down, the sigma L will have this resonating form, as you know, it is 4 pi by k square 12 plus 1 gamma by 2 whole square, and this Lorentzian form where this gamma is identified at the width of the resonance. So that is basically the partial wave part of this scattering chapter. The next thing I will do is the Born approximation, which is a more general method.